Hey everybody, this afternoon it's time to winterize the Chaparral, and this is a boat with a 4.5 liter Mercruiser stern drive in it. So I figured I'd go ahead and tape and show you what it takes to prepare one of these for storage for over the winter. So here goes. Well, first of all, when you're doing one of these fuel injected engines, you need a special fuel mixture. My old 98 Mercruiser, which was carbureted, you could spray fogging oil in it, and all you needed to do was have stabilized fuel in the tank. So Mercury in the service manual will tell you to mix a 6-gallon can of gas, but frankly, in order to do this, you don't need more than about a quart for the amount of time that you need to run the engine. So what I have here is a gallon can. So to do this mix, you need about 12 ounces to a gallon, 12 ounces of 2-stroke, and then a little dose of fuel stabilizer. You don't need much because it's an ounce to 10 gallons, so about an 1/8 ounce or so is about all this thing needs. And just a touch. It'll keep the gas from going bad in the injectors over the winter. There's one trick with this can that I have to be careful. I kind of wanted to do it with only a 1/2 gallon of gas, but there's a flame suppressor, a safety device in here, and with that I can't get my hose all the way to the bottom of the can, so I don't want to run short, so I run the can a little more full, shake it up good and mix it all. The safety screen in there is a good idea, just for this particular project, would be nicer if it didn't have it, but that's okay. Alright, so then I have my hose that I couple together over the summer, and then the hose goes down in the gas can, and I've got a cap and a washer, and one of these days I need to find a better washer, a better seal arrangement. But you only use this system for, about 20 minutes a year. So right now I just try to be careful to not to spill. We set this out on the swim platform area. There we go. Thread this guy on. It holds the big flat washer down. The hose is not captured. It can't come out because it's got a fitting on it, but there is a possibility of leakage, so you just have to be a little extra careful. So then this goes inside, and we'll go do a connection. Okay, and then the next thing I do is I'm going to fire it up. There's water connected, the garden hose is connected at the back, so the engine has water. I'm going to light it up and idle for a minute and make sure that it runs before I just connect the fuel and connect in the other lines. Okay, well, I'm going to hook up my fuel hose now, and there are actually two choices. One is there's a fitting here at the tank that you can take loose, and I've done that one before. And the other one is here at the fuel pump inlet with the hose up a little higher. And the caution is on either end is if your tank is full or mostly full and you lift the nose of the boat up, you can get fuel at the back of the tank and you could have a leak here. So it probably is, one, safer to use, make sure the boat's level, and then disconnect it at that point. And It would also be good to cap it, but I don't have a cap for it. So you just need to be a little careful that you have a, open chance for some fumes, but it really shouldn't be too bad. We'll keep the thing ventilated. Have a rag underneath to catch anything that wants to spill. And for me, 11/16 works on one end and 3/4 on the other. Just pop that one loose. There we go, like so. And then I'll take the other end of my fuel hose here with its connection, and we'll spin that on this end. Everybody has different plumbing on their boats. It could be different arrangement. For me, these are pretty much standard flare fittings. The hose is certified fuel hose, designed for gas, and cinch these down so they don't leak. So there's my can sitting out on the swim platform, so it's not inside the boat. Here's the hose with the squeeze bulb, with the arrow pointed toward the engine, and then all my hose down to the fitting. So we'll squeeze this guy until we get fuel and get it to prime. That feels pretty good. Consumption goes, I have a vessel view system on my phone, and so we're running at 1270. It's warmed up to 142. The gallons per hour is about 1.4, 1.5. So you could do this for 45 minutes instead of 5 minutes, and you wouldn't use that gallon up. So you really can hear the exhaust note change when that mixture hits. And I'm now 5 minutes in, so we're going to shut her down. So now that we're warmed up, now it's time we can do an oil change. And I'm going to leave this fuel hooked up for now, because we will, the process will be oil and filter first. Well, actually, I'm going to turn off the water for the moment and begin draining the lower unit oil, and then I'll come back and do the oil change. When we finish the oil change and the lower unit lube, then we'll fire it up and do the antifreeze. So to begin, I've already removed the beauty covers. So the next step is to remove this lid from the reservoir. That is the bottle, and it's going to take me some time to let it drain, but let me go and get that started. Alright, so I've got the drive tipped up all the way, and the vent plug is still in per procedure. And this one, the drain plug, is on the right hand side. And I got to get my biggest screwdriver that fits that slot, and we'll pop her loose. There we go. And one of the things that you want to watch for as this starts to drain is whether it has water in it. whether you get any water or whether you get any, whether it's foamy. Because if it's leaking, the water in the oil isn't a good lubricant, and you know, you can kind of end up with a mess. End up with a mess means damaging the gears, damaging the bearings. So if you end up getting water out, what you want to do, what you could have is, there are seals behind the propeller. There's an oil seal on the shaft for the propeller, and there's another oil seal underneath the water pump. And if either one of those is leaking and as I say, putting water into your gear oil, then you need to get those seals repaired or replaced. I also did lower the drive. In the old days, my older boat, the screw is on the other side, but it's down in the bottom of the bullet, so you wanted it tipped all the way up. This one is back a little bit further, and so I'm dropping it down so it gets a better. I think it's draining a little faster this way. So, all right. So on this engine, we have the advantage that the oil filter is remote. It's up front here. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll pull the dipstick out. So we'll get this guy threaded on. Hose in the pan. So now we're going to suction her out. Sounds like I got it to the bottom, pretty close here. I'm going to keep going just a little more until I don't see any more come out of the hose. Okay, since I've got the oil sucked down as far as I can, let's take this guy off of here. Okay. Wipe that down. Alright, now we get the filter. And I have a separate little jug here that's a half of an old antifreeze bottle that I put underneath. I use that for quite a few things to catch a little bit of oil, especially when I'm doing filters. So first of all, we'll break it loose just a little. I can turn it by hand from there, and we'll try to catch it. Most of it drains back, to the inside. We'll just catch, there's a slot over here, and it'll drain out into my pan. Just let her drip for a minute. Make sure the seat's clean. Just let that catch drips from that. Pick up my oil spill. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Wipe off that sealing surface. Okay. Now that I have a new filter, I'll just put a little clean oil on it. can't fill this filter because it's putting it on the other way around. But we'll just put a fresh coating of oil on there. And then it says 3/4 of a turn once it contacts. So we'll spin it down till it touches gently. Okay, it's right about there. So my end of my sticker is here. 3/4 of a turn would be over here, so let's go to there. That's good. We can wipe this off. Leave that there for just a couple of minutes. And then we'll go ahead and fill it. I know this one from experience is when you use that size filter, which is what Mercury uses, it's pretty doggone exact as to the I mean, 5 quarts brings it right up. Fills the filter, gets you right smack on the dot. So well, it took a while, but the inside bottle seems to have drained. And by a while, I'll say probably 45 minutes. So now I'm going to pop out the vent here on the other side. And it should continue to drain. Let's see how we do. Yeah, maybe that's everything. We'll just give her a minute. Looks good. Alright. Mercruiser has moved the drain plug. On my other engine, it's on the opposite side. And it's down further in the bullet, so. Okay. So we do that. So then we fill this guy until we get fluid out the vent hole on the other side. I wish they'd have left the hole on the opening on the same side, because it's harder to watch the vent when you're filling from the opposite side. Normally, when I do this, I'll go in and I'll warm the bottles up with hot water so that it flows easier. But today, I'm very fortunate to have a rare November day. The temperature's about 65 degrees outside. And these bottles have been in the house, so they were warm before they came out. So it's not like I'm trying to do this when it's in the 30s or 40s. Now that one's reached its limit, so let's switch bottles. Usually takes a little more than a quart, and that one wasn't quite full. I used some of that topping up one of my other engines. So we're watching that port. Oh, there you go. That's full. When you hit that point, you can put the plug back in. The book would want me to pump some more from the bottom, put the plug in, continue to fill from the bottom, and refill into the bottle. But since I have about a quarter or half the bottle still there, I'm not going to do that today because I know it's still feeding down. So we'll put this guy in here. Cinch her down. So once the vent is in, you can pop this guy out very quickly as it comes out. Put the plug back in. Okay. Snug those down. I have my bottle here of my bottle of antifreeze. I've been using 50/50, 200, and let's just check that and see what it is. This is fresh, so it's 50/50 that's been diluted. So it comes in at minus 35 on the refractometer. These guys, this is the same mix, but it came out of the engine exhaust. I collected what was coming back out. And it comes in at minus 38. I capture as much as I can so that you don't waste or pollute. And just for comparison, if you do one of these things with a floating ball, let's see what we get out of that. See, it says all the balls float, and they claim when all the balls float, you got minus 50 freeze protection. So there's always some debate about, in propylene glycols, they use a freeze point and then they use a burst point, and I always kind of try to go to the freeze point as being safer, and I think from what I can tell that's what the refractometer actually does. Is it's the freeze point, not the burst point, but so be it. So anyhow, I've got to fill my bottle here. One of the problems I've found, or challenges I'll say, with this engine is getting all the water out. And so I'm going to use this kit that puts antifreeze through the earmuffs and right into the lower unit of the engine. We're going to run it until it sucks in most of it, and then I'll shut it down. And then, let me back up. First we'll drain all the water that we can. And then we'll feed this. Now, what happens is, all these bottles, I collect with pans underneath here, the exhaust. And all of the stuff that comes out of the exhaust is just as good as what I put in. But for some reason, at the end of the year, whatever's in the block ends up not being quite as good. So it's as if there's some water trapped in hoses somewhere that doesn't get circulated. And so I haven't figured that out. I mean, I've done this a couple of years now, and this will be the third time. The dealer, when the dealer did it, when I got the boat back in spring, and there was nothing in the block. They had drained they had processed it, I think, like I'm doing, and then they had drained it. So there was only residue in the engine. There wasn't anything to collect more than about a cupful. So kind of interesting. So I'm still trying to figure this one out. The single point drain system on this engine has a lot of plumbing. Last year I took the trouble to go inside. There are quick connects on the sides of the block, and I verified that the block actually did drain. And so there was no water in the block when I was done before I ran this process. So there must be, water trapped in hoses. They caution you to drain it for 10 full minutes. And the boat's going to sit in the garage all winter, and the garage is normally above freezing. But there are times where, for one reason or another, I roll it out in the winter because I need to use the garage for something, and then it sits outside, and it will get minus 30 up here. So you just never know where the boat's going to sit over the course of the winter. So I always make sure that I have enough protection, both freeze protection and corrosion protection. One more thing on the topic of antifreeze. We talked about burst protection and freeze protection. So this is my Starbright minus 200, and basically it's burst protection at minus 200, freeze protection at minus 100, and they have a dilution chart that you can get for it. And so I've been using it at 50-50. When you take this freeze protection of minus 100 and you do 50-50, you get about minus 35 or 40, which is pretty doggone good. And that's where it starts to gel, and then the burst protection is even further. So that's what I've been using now for several years. I like to buy the high concentration and just dilute it to what I want it to be, and that works pretty darn well. So these engines have a single point drain, the Alphas. I think it is the Bravos that have they have a pressurized drain, but this one's just gravity. So you take this back, and you can see the water's starting to drain. And there's a blue plug down there that if it didn't drain, you could use the blue plug. Then over here, on top of basically the thermostat housing, there's another plug that you take off to make sure that the system doesn't have an airlock in it and that it actually drains. Yep, you can hear it go right there, because that one's like on the back side of the thermostat. So I know what time it is. I'm going to let that go ahead and drain. So at this stage, I've got the blue plug out. I put a rag over the drive belt area so I don't accidentally spill any coolant on the belt, because that tears them up really badly. And then I have a tube that goes down into there with a funnel in the end of it. And by my previous work, 1 3/4 gallons, or 7 quarts, ought to fill the block up. And then we'll go to the back and open up the bottle for the fill kit and start the engine. The reason, I'll just go a little further, the reason I want to do this is this way. The fill plug is down here, or vent plug, whatever you want to call it. It's down fairly low, and the exhaust manifolds are up pretty high, and I'm sure they drain down, but you don't get any corrosion protection if they don't get any coolant going through them. The coolant that you need to use is designed for engine storage, and it's propylene glycol that has, it's non-toxic, but it's got corrosion inhibitors. So it says it's safe for all engines, including aluminum. So if you fill the block that far, but nothing gets up into the manifolds and so forth, you don't get the maximum protection. Now, on my V8, that fill point is up high, and I use a piece of pipe that stands up above the exhaust manifolds, and I fill it until things are running out the back. And that's always made me pretty comfortable to do it without using the EARMUFFS kit, I'll call it. So for right now, for this engine, I'm going to fill this, and I'll be back when I get 1 3/4 in there. Okay, I got my gallon or 7 quarts loaded in there, and I brought it up to the top. Before you do that, incidentally, you need to make sure this is closed before you start filling there. It took me quite a while to fill because I have a fairly small hose. Maybe for next year I'll come up with a better way. I had a comment from someone who tried this method, and he said he used a pressurized, I believe he said a deck sprayer without the nozzle on it, so that he could pump it in there directly, and he was very happy with that. So earlier, separate thing, we talk about vessel view. That module down there, right there, is the vessel view Bluetooth module that I installed, and you wire tie it into place, and it connects into the wiring harness so that you can so that the vessel view has something to operate off of. Okay, time to finish the antifreeze job here. Just a moment. Okay, now that the block is filled, I've got my buckets to catch what comes out. I'll turn this on and start feeding some solution down to the water pump. I like this from Alright, now we're going to go fire it up. see what we got out the back here. My refractometer. The answer is -40 is what came out the exhaust there. So that looks like a good test. Okay. Well, we didn't use all of it. I did forget to track the vent, so the bottle was starting to suffer. But I did get it in time, and we kept feeding. So. At this point now, you wait for all the coolant to drain out into the buckets. And I lose a couple quarts, but it's amazing. Out of everything I put in that bucket, that's all I lose is a quart or two. And this is biodegradable polyethylene glycol, or propylene glycol. Get the right words here. But all these places have to drain out, and then the service manual will tell you. Of course, if some of the you could tell, but they want you to come in and run a wire in and check and make sure that the speedometer pickup, which is at the front there, that's open. They want this one to be open, and it's draining like mad. So there are just several places on here where there are ports that need to drain. We can go back around and put the covers back. Disconnect the fuel line off this little tank and put the fuel line back the way it belongs. And I need to top up the lower unit drive monitor. And then under this cushion on this boat, there's actually a live well, and I have a piece of hose that I can put in there and feed with a funnel to put some antifreeze in the hoses in the loop. That live well pulls through a fitting on the bottom of the boat and circulates and sends it out the side. So that just needs to be winterized also. But now I can tuck her back away for the winter and we'll be all set. One other thing on this bottle, I've got it standing up now, but when you use one of these, you have to watch out, because even though there's still, looks like there's plenty in the bottle, when the level gets down to the point here where it isn't feeding the pipe anymore, you either have to support the back of the bottle and tip it forward, or that's when I see the level get down to there where it's not going to be feeding the hose anymore. That's when I go shut the engine down. That's all there is. I'll do that. I'll do the cleanup stuff, and she'll be ready. I've got the fuel's all stabilized, and it's got wreck gas in it, and so we're all good. All set to be tucked back in the garage till spring. So with the antifreeze in, the process is done. Now it's just time to clean up. Take care of your drain oil properly, collect the antifreeze and put it back into jugs. You do want to make sure that you don't hook up the normal fuel line until this is done. Once you've got this finished and you've got the antifreeze in, now we're all done. Now you go back and disconnect the extra gas tank, the special fuel, and connect your regular fuel up, and you should be ready for spring. I will say there are a few other things of maintenance that are, in the book to do, some different lubrication points and things. This 2018 is, a lot of things are sealed. It used to be you'd grease the gimbal bearing and you'd grease the pivots and stuff. Most of those are now sealed. There's still a few things on the maintenance schedule, and we'll maybe talk about those another time. Hey, just for a check-in, now that the winterizing is complete, with the new process, so I pre-filled the block and ran the process. I had only about 4 gallons in the bottle. I'm going to go drain off a little bit from the single point drain and see if it's diluted any over the weekend. It's been 2 days now since I ran the process. Okay, so I've got a jar here, and I'm just going to put a trickle in the bottom of the jar here with the single point drain. Come on. There we go. We'll go a little more. There. And then we'll go check that with the refractometer. I'm going to show a little more about how to use one of these refractometers again in a separate video. But here's the jar of what I did. The refractometer comes with some of these little pipettes, with a squeeze bulb on them, so you can get a sample. You put droplets on the prism until it's pretty well coated. You put that down and you try to get it so that all the air's out of it. So the answer is -42, -41 to 42. And when I started, I'll need to go back and double check, but I believe my start was -44. So we picked up a little bit of stray water in the system, but now I'm still beyond -40, which is way more than I need. But compared to what I was getting before, which was a lot of dilution, it looks like this was successful. We filled the block, we got fluid circulated through the exhaust system and out to the exhaust, and I have freeze protection past -40 degrees Fahrenheit. So these are handy little devices. If you don't have one, you know, you can go through Amazon. They're like 25 bucks. It's less than 25 bucks. They're pretty doggone handy. So now I can tuck this in the garage for the winter and we'll be all set. I hope you enjoyed that video. If so, please subscribe to my channel.